Good Sunday afternoon. This is the third Sunday in the month of March in the year 2025. And today we're going to talk about part two of my journey to independence. When I left off last week, we had talked about my trip to the ARC, the Alcohol Rehab Center in Wiesbaden, Germany, and how they thought that I might be a plant because I had been on the medical staff in RAF Lakenheath. But I assured them that I was there for myself, that I needed to get my life and my act together. So that first week, we just plunged right into things. We had orientation, of course, as to what the 28-day program would be about and how we would be introduced to AA, Alcoholics Anonymous, amongst other things. So, went to bed the night of the 28th, and it was a restless night, not just for myself, but the other 11 people who were also starting the program that month. And so went on. We weren't really used to getting up quite as early as we had to, which was 5 a.m. We had to take turns in a three-person shower and went to breakfast as a group. But we had to wait for everybody to be done and ready to travel en masse. And so that's what we did. After that, and mind you, this is Saturday, the 28th of June that we had started this whole thing. And it was Sunday, the first day that our program actually started. So after breakfast, we went back, made our beds and all, and we had our first group session. And we were introduced to the facilitators of the group. I won't give you their actual names, but one was a doctor, one was a psychologist, and we called them the M&M brothers because their last names both began with the letter M. Anyway, right away they chose one person to what they call put in the barrel. And they put that person in the center of the group. We sat in a circle. And they started to bombard that person with questions about his life and how he managed to get to where he is. And so it went on that way for several days. That was our routine, which also included trips to the gym and other various things. But we wound up having 3 to 4 different groups each day, group therapy sessions. Well, let's move forward to the night of July 3rd. Went to bed July 3rd, just prior to 10 p.m., and was sleeping pretty good when all of a sudden I felt this nudging at my shoulder. And when I opened my eyes, there was this little red-headed two-striper, and I say little. I stand 6 foot, and this fellow was about 5'4", just making the height to be in the military at that time. And he never really gave me his name, but he said to me, I need you to come with me. And I said, okay, so I got up and we went to the NCOIC's office, which was up a short flight of stairs and closed in glass where he could look out over the group. But it was only this little red-headed two-striper and myself in there. And he asked about my background. I gave him my background. And he said to me, "Do you mind if I pray for you?" And I said, "Sure, go ahead." And so that's exactly what he did. And he went very deep into prayer. Must have lasted a good 5 or 6 minutes. And when he was done, I felt a little bit enlightened. And then he escorted me back to my bed and he said, "Good night, sleep well." Well, a few hours later, when I awoke, I felt pretty good. I felt really good, as a matter of fact. I felt energized. And when the NCOIC was making his rounds, I said, "Hey," I said, "I didn't get that technician's name last night." And he said, "What technician?" And I said, "The little red-headed two-striper." And he said, "Red-headed two-striper? We don't have any red-headed two-striper here." And I said, "Sure you do." And I went on and I described him again. I said, "He's a little red-headed two-striper, about 23, 24 years old." He said, He said, "There's nobody like that here on this staff." I said, "But he prayed with me last night." And his eyes got wide. And he said, "He did what?" I said, "He prayed with me last night." And he said, "I'll tell you again, Rod. There is no red-headed two-striper on staff." Well, my conclusion was that for the second time in my life, and one day I'll tell you about the first, but for the second time in my life, I had had a visitation from the Lord. And I mean, what happened after, for the rest of that day, I was just so full of energy. After breakfast, we went to the gym, and I did something that I'd never done before in my life. As we played basketball, I actually dunked the ball 3 times. And the most I'd ever been able to do prior to that was to jump up and touch the rim. So that just gives you an idea of what was even going on in my body, not just in my mind at that time. And the whole day was like that. After we had our group session, our first group session, we went to the bowling alley and I bowled a 225. First time in my life that I had bowled over 200. And so that's the way things were going. And for our evening group session, the M&M brothers decided that it was my turn in the barrel. Now, mind you, that this was July 4th, Independence Day. And as they grilled me and wanted to delve further into my life, one of the things about them was they tried to break your spirit because they felt that the only way to build you up was to start from the very bottom. Well, here's the thing. What got me to the ark was I had already hit my bottom. I had been used to receiving outstanding evaluations. The system then graded us from a 0 to 9, 9 being the highest. And from day one in the military, my evaluations had always been a 9. And what brought me to a realization that something in my life had changed was I had received a 5 from my supervisor. Well, back to the ark. The harder they tried, the harder and more frustrated they got. Why? Because I kept a smile on my face. And finally, they asked me, they said, "Why do you keep smiling?" And my answer was, "Because I am free." I said, "I feel I no longer need alcohol in my life to get by every minute of every day. I don't feel like I need alcohol in my life anymore to help me through whatever situation I perceive is going on in my mind. I said, I am free. And so they just stopped right then and there, trying to break me and put somebody else in the barrel. But that was July 4th, 1975. And I have declared since then that that is not only the Independence Day of the United States of America, but it is my Independence Day, the Independence Day of Rodney James Gross. So keep all of that in mind, and we'll talk more about my journey to independence and what has happened in my life since. Okay, we'll do that next week. So until then, be blessed, stay safe, and always remember 1 Thessalonians chapter 5, verse 11, where it says to encourage one another and to lift each other up.